It's been a long journey. Okay, where did it all start?
Yeah, so for me, I had a lot different upbringing than I think a lot of people. I was raised in northern Manitoba. Yeah, I was raised Mennonite, so there's no TV, no radio. The upside to that is you're always staying busy. So I was pretty much outside every day, hunting, fishing, trapping, working.
I kind of want to dig into like what being a Mennonite is like. So like, that's not full on no technology.
No, it's not like Amish or anything.
Right.
It's just the entertainment part, I guess. So music, TV, things like that. They have their own school system, which it only goes to grade 9. So I'm actually the first one in my family to go on to high school or go on past grade 9. I went pretty much just to play football. My parents had split up around grade 7 and had left their religion. I continued on, finished there till grade 9, and then I went on to public school.
Are you still in contact with anybody? Like any friends from there?
Oh yeah, lots. All my extended family is still in the religion.
And what does everyone do? Everyone's farmers?
It's not just, a lot of them do farm, but it's not just they do lots of different stuff. Now I think a lot more of them do go get their GED, which is like a grade 12 equivalent. So they do lots of stuff, but it's all, they do lots of construction, lots of farming, but they run businesses and
so everybody kind of is an entrepreneur there. Everybody's running their own small business, be it a farm, be it a little shop, anything, right? Yeah, so the nice part, like I said, usually they go to grade 9 and join the workforce right away. So they're, they get a big head start. The other thing that I learned going to public school was their education, like what I was doing in grade 9 was kind of the equivalent of grade 11 probably in public school. Or that's what I found, at least. Like a lot of the stuff, it came really, really easy going to. Because they try to set you up a little better for life because they know you might end right there.
Generally.
Okay. And then how do you think, like, seeing your parents, run their own operation, do you think that had any impact on being like, I want to, like, not just get a normal job, I want to do my own thing?
Yeah, probably. My mom, we farmed, and then my mom she actually started her own small business, so she made like furniture and crafts and stuff, and she ended up growing that into quite a little business. We had a shop at the farm, and she kind of grew that into a cool little business, watching her do that, and that kind of gave our family enough, gave us extra money so we could go on trips and do things like that. I did, even from a little kid, I was always really interested in business. So I remember I used to go like collect clams from the river, and I'd sell them to farmers. I had read in an encyclopedia that it would eat algae in ponds. So we would go and I would sell them to farmers. I'd sell them pails of these to put in their ponds. I don't know if it actually worked, but they would buy them. And then I used to, even with hunting and trapping, that's when I first kind of remember having that interest in getting bigger with business. I had a business plan all drawn up, how as soon as I would get my driver's license, I'd have trailers and I'd have trap lines set up all over the province and people to skin it. And I'd built out this little model how that could be my career path.
So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I want to like be a real estate guy. It was like, I just want to like be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I don't even, I don't know if that's the goal when you're that age. It's just that's what I was interested in. I never had a big interest in going and working at an office or I did lots of jobs. I did construction and drove truck, and I did do lots of things, but that was never something I looked at as a long-term,
So then take us from going to high school, finishing high school, to when you bought a gym.
Yeah. So high school, once I gave up on the NFL dream, farming was kind of what I wanted to do with my life. That's what kind of all we had done. And so I would farm from spring till fall, and then in the winters I would come out to Alberta to work in the winters. So again, that's where I did a lot of different stuff, truck, construction, things like that. That's where I met my wife, Kelsa. So we dated back and forth, or long distance, for about 2 years. She moved to Manitoba, and that's after she had moved there is kind of when we had the idea to build the gym. We were still farming at the time. There wasn't really any gyms in the town. It was a smaller community. So that's when we had the idea, got the plans, and then it was about 2 weeks before we were supposed to pour the concrete. The general contractor backed out, And so we had to find a new carpenter, and we jumped in, general contracted it, and built that. That was in 2014 we built the gym.
So you didn't just acquire it, you built it from the ground up?
Yeah, we built it from the ground up. So we did, like the painting and some of the construction stuff we did on our own. That was a lot of fun. It was a fun project, learning experience for sure. And yeah, we got it up and running by the next summer. And then we had to kind of learn everything from scratch. So sales, marketing, retail, none of that anyone in our family had done. And we kind of had to learn that all, build our own systems and stuff. So, but it was a busy time. The gym was called Fit 24/7, and we were actually, at the beginning, we were open. We were staffed 7 days a week. Most of those days were 12-hour days during the week, and then I was still farming. And it was only me and my wife that worked there. So it was definitely a busy time.
How did it feel when the gym was profitable, you're making money from a business that you started from nothing?
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I get very like, I have to be growing or moving forward, or I get really bored. So as soon as we knew it made it, I was looking for something else. That's just my personality. So it was obviously good. We had a pretty strong belief we could make it work. But we had no proof of concept or anything, and it was a small community. So it was definitely a big risk looking back now, but at the time we were going to make it work.
So then do you think that gave you the confidence that you could like just start almost any kind of business and make it work?
Yeah, I guess. I think we kind of had that confidence, and like I said, looking back now, that was way more of a risk than anything we've ever done, or than most of the stuff we do, because it was literally from nothing, and you had no proof if it would work. But yeah, we had a lot of hard work. We knew we could make it work.
So gym's taken off, you're a couple years in, start getting bored, then what?
Yeah, so after we had ran it for 2 years, we got out of farming, and then we were looking for the next thing. And that's kind of how we found real estate. I was reading an article in Forbes. It was called Mobile Home Park Millionaires, and it was how all these big funds in the States were buying up parks all across North America, and how the business model worked. It made a lot of sense to me. And then kind of just by fate, there was the park in our town went up for sale. So I remember we got the numbers on it, and it just made total sense. It seemed way undervalued. So we were able to do some creative financing, bought the park, and that was our first step into real estate.
And that was like full owner, I need to maintain the whole park, I need to collect rent.
Yeah. So again, we kind of jumped right in. It was a pretty big, I think there's 69 pads on the park. It was very hands-on. So all the water had to be read manually. A lot of the people paid cash. The park had been let go for years, so we had to rebuild all the roads. We renovated all the park-owned trailers. There was a house on the property. We turned it into a duplex. And we had to start putting systems in so it wasn't so hands-on on the management side. But again, we were kind of right back at our whole life was work at that point. My wife's water broke. We were at the park working at it, and I have a picture. It was like days after our son was born where we were back there renovating a unit. Not because I forced her to be there. She wanted to be. She's always been a big part of all the businesses. So,
do you think that's like what it takes to succeed in any business venture, is like that total commitment? Like, this is like my life. It's not just 9 to 5. I don't just stop. I need to do that all day, every day.
I think that you have to be willing to do that. I don't know if that's always what it takes, but I think a lot of people get into business because they think they're going to have this, this freedom and stuff. That doesn't come for years and years. And there's a lot of, generally you have to be willing to outwork people, I think. So yeah, for me, for sure, that's what it took, and multiple times in my life. Whether that's the same for everybody, I don't know. But
because it kind of seems like a bit of a trend, right? Like you were able to make this gym a success because you were willing to step in and pour your own concrete.
Yeah.
And you were able to make this trailer park a success because you were willing to be there, constantly doing the hands-on stuff, not just being the money behind it.
Yeah.
But actually doing the work.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a sense of urgency. Like if we didn't need the money and we had just opened the gym and hired someone to run it, maybe it would have worked out, but I wouldn't have got up at 5 a.m. to train people 3 hours before we opened and go back in the evening to do it. And same with the trailer park. If you just hired people to manage it and do the renovations, there's no way it's as profitable as quickly. And I think there's definitely something to be said for burning the ships and going all in on something.
While you were running the trailer park and it was like working, it was a viable business, were you already like looking at the next thing? Yeah,
pretty much. It was very similar. As soon as we got to where we knew it would sustain, I was looking for something else. There was a lot of extra we could do there with moving in trailers and stuff too, so we were pretty busy with that, and you could still grow it. And then we were able to buy a second park, an adjoining park at tax auction 2 years after that, and we picked it up really cheap. And same thing, it was a lot of land, but it needed some work.
And so that was kind of like the formula was like fix what needs to be fixed, like acquire cheap, fix what needs to be fixed, and then turn it into profitable.
Yeah, and we were just trying to get the revenue up. Real estate, it's always pretty much valued on net income, so you just have to get the income up. And with that park too, like we were trying to kind of change the demographic. There was some drug dealers and stuff in there when we first took over, and you're trying to improve the park, make it somewhere people want to live. They want to move trailers in.
How do you, what does that even entail to up the value of a property?
Yeah, now it's a lot different what we do with our model now. Back in Manitoba, it's a really big process. You have to go through a rental tenancy branch. So it was a huge process because you have to go in, do all these renovations or all these, improve the roads, do all this. And then you have to submit to the government essentially to ask for that rent increase. But before you do it, you have to submit to all the tenants with the maximum amount you want to raise rent. And there's nothing in there that says that might come over 5 years. So they just get this letter that says you want to raise rent by 30%. And you probably will never get that amount, but you have to ask for it. So you send it to all them, then they go back to the government and complain, and then they actually tell you to start charging it, and then they'll let you know if it's been approved. So then a year later you get a letter that says it's approved or it wasn't. So it was a big process, but usually you're doing things, just you're improving it so that you can get rents up.
So you have the 2 mobile parks now.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to being like, oh, I want to manage multifamily buildings?
Yeah, so we kind of looked at it. Initially we were probably going to stay in the mobile home park space. It was getting to be, even from when we started till then, it was a really, hot asset class. So the bigger parks were all getting sold to funds and stuff. We couldn't compete there. And the smaller ones, because like a 60-pad park in a small community is different than a 60-unit apartment. There's way lower rents because you're just renting the land. So the model to scale that up and to go buy a bunch of parks, we couldn't see it. There wasn't a lot available. They weren't trading at much different cap rates than an apartment was at the time. So we started looking at other asset classes, and that's when we moved into multifamily. And we also knew we wanted to be in a bigger center. We had enough in that community. So initially we bought 2 small 8-unit properties in Edmonton, and that was kind of our first step into multifamily.
And did you offload the parks at that point?
No, we kept them for a couple of years after that.
Okay. So is that the genesis of excess asset management, or were you calling it that with the parks?
No, it actually came even later than that. So kind of what happened for us, we had bought the 2 properties in Edmonton, and we had kind of a 5-year plan in place to move to Edmonton. Again, we just kind of had, I think, outgrown or there wasn't a lot of growth left in that community for what we were doing.
And that's going to make you bored.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a plan to move. We went down, it was in 2020, we went down to a conference in the States we go down to every year. And the speaker he was talking about how if you're not living to your fullest potential or you're not growing, he's like, you're not a tree, you don't have roots, you can get up and move. And so me and my wife on the way home from that conference just had a talk and decided to expedite our plans and move. And I mean, the timing of that could not have worked better. When the flight there was the first time I had ever seen anything about COVID in North America. So they were putting stickers on your passport if you'd been to China. That was the very first, it was one of the last big conferences that got put on before COVID. So we came home, kind of expedited our plans. We sold the gym. There was a guy that was interested. He bought it, and the week we handed the keys over was the first 2 weeks to stop the spread. So that gym had never been closed even for a minute to our members. They had key fob access 24 hours a day. And the week he took over was we locked the doors. And then, so had we waited and thought about it for a few months, that would have never happened.
Do you think that's like another, just like traits of, I guess, successful people, is that you move, like you don't like sit around waiting for something to come to you, you like just make the move?
Yeah, and I think, I guess you jump on opportunities, or you take opportunities, and, I have no idea what my life would have turned out if we stayed there either. Maybe we would have found something totally different or moved at a different point. But for us, the timing of even moving here worked really well. So kind of what happened, we sold the gym, listed our house, it sold, right away. The dad of the girl that bought our house came, and he came to talk to me. He's like, look, I don't want to have to buy her, or he's like, I want to help her out as much as I can. So he's like, I want you to leave everything. He's like, leave the furniture. So he gave me a check, and we left the furniture, and he came back again, and he's like, look, anything. He's like, leave the pots and the pans. And he's like, you can even leave the food in the fridge. He said, just leave everything. So we moved, and we had our kids' stuff and our clothes, and we moved to Edmonton, middle of lockdown. So I remember driving around the Henday, and you wouldn't pass a vehicle for kilometers. It was a crazy time.
Was there a time during that where you were like afraid? Because like you have a family at this point,
yeah,
and not really like a guaranteed income source.
Yeah. So I mean, but again, that's kind of the burn the ships mentality. I think if you have a crutch to fall back on, it's a little bit harder. So yeah, we moved out here, essentially starting fresh. I guess that fear or whatever, you have some self-belief in there that you can make it work, or that you have to make it work.
And that's the thing, right? Like this is like already like your third, fourth business venture, if we're counting trapping beavers. And so like I guess you have that confidence that I can do it, right? If I do the work, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess you have, I mean, I'm sure we had lots of self-doubt, but there was always the thought in my mind, I'm like, absolute worst case, I can go get a job somewhere and survive until we find something, right? But luckily for us, the timing just, it worked so perfectly with how COVID worked. The real estate market had just froze. So all transactions basically stopped. So there were still lots listed, but no one was buying. And at the same time, we had like historically low interest rates. They were at an all-time low. So we came into a market, and generally you might not always get the ear of the top couple brokers or whatever, because you're new to the market, you don't have a track record, but they were all they needed buyers. Everyone was scared at that point. Yeah. So I think the first 2 properties we ended up buying had other offers on the table, and people walked away from hard money. So yeah, our first property when we got here, we bought, it was Lakeland Village. It was a 27-unit townhome complex. And once we took it over, found out 7 of them were empty, which hadn't really reflected when we bought it, and they all needed massive renovations. So again, it was basically us, and we brought the kids and a playpen, and we were doing all the renovations ourselves. Pretty much lived at the property for the first couple months we owned it. From day one, like, we wanted to set up a big we wanted to have this be a big real estate company. What we knew needed to happen first, though, was we can't, so we were always going to at some point bring in investor capital. We didn't want to do that when we had one small property or a couple small properties. So we had to build up that scale. We had to show that we could manage the properties before you do that. So that was what this was. It was building up enough portfolio size that we feel comfortable going to market with that, and showing people like, look, we can do what we're saying we're going to do. So with those, it was just with the debt we could get and stuff, they actually cash flowed really good. So that's what we could live on as well. But it was, we wanted to renovate them, get the rents up and stuff. But the model was never to pull the money out right away. We put long-term debt on from day one, and that allowed them to cash flow good.
So really, it was like almost like a real estate asset management internship. Like, this is like where you're going to prove that you can do it.
Yeah, and I mean, my thought was always, worst case, we never do bring in, and we have an awesome piece of property that cash flows and pays us, you know. But the plan was always to scale it up. At this point, when we took over that, Mason, who runs our management company now, he had started looking after those 2 small properties for us when we weren't living here. He was helping with the management side now, and Kelsey was doing all the back end stuff, and we were also doing the renovations. And
so once you kind of prove, I don't know, a couple of years of running those buildings?
Well, it's kind of a scale thing too. Like if you ran 2 duplexes for a bunch of years, no one's going to really feel that confident, I don't think. Right. So we wanted to just get enough scale. So after the 27 unit, that's when we sold our trailer parks. We had someone from back home reach out. They were interested in buying it. And then we bought a 46 unit building in St. Albert, so just outside the city. And that's when we were starting to get people, you know, you got out there a little bit more, started to get a bit of a network in the city. People in the industry kind of knew who we were, and that's when we were approached a bit more, people wanting to start investing at that point. What I didn't want to ever do was bring in investors before we were ready or had a legal vehicle to do it in. So we could have done notes or whatever, but I wanted to make sure that we had a way to bring people in so that we didn't have to restructure 2 or 3 years down the road. So we didn't bring anyone in on that property, and on the third one, that's when we essentially started Excess Asset Management. We started the limited partnership, rolled the 2 existing properties in.
And where are you like learning how the whole industry works? Like, are you reading books? Are you just like figuring it out as it goes?
Yeah, that's probably what I get asked. Yeah, more than anything is where you learn it, and I'm I don't know what the word is, but I just love learning, and to me, real estate is like the most interesting thing I could ever study or learn. So it's talking to people, it's reading, listening to podcasts, watching videos, and you're just doing it, and you learn along the way. So if I go to set up a limited partnership, that's something where I thought, there's a template. I'll call a lawyer, we'll set that up. I mean, it's a massive undertaking to do it, and we had to write all the, it was a huge process that, so something like that, you learn that. Now I know that, right? And that's kind of the way everything does. You pick it up along the way. You'll find too, if you're aligned with the right people, they'll help you out. Like I've made a couple relationships, and they've introduced me to people and helped me more than then it would have taken me years to meet all the people that I'm connected to now.
Yeah, how important is that networking side of it, getting your name out there in the community of people who would want to invest?
In that community, but it's in the whole industry. Like, I met a guy probably well before I was even at the level that he could have worked with me. I had came to the city and I had coffee with someone, and he's a great friend of mine now, and he has introduced me to more people than like I said, I still wouldn't know all the people I know. He can also, having someone who's in the industry vouch for you, like if he calls a broker and says like, hey, this kid's looking for and if he introduces you, that right away gives you that more credibility. So a couple of relationships like that helped us a lot. Coming in during COVID, like I said, made a big difference, because now, I'd consider most of the top brokers in the city friends of mine. They're all younger guys, and I got to know them in a time when there wasn't as many buyers. And now that we've bought and closed on deals and we're easy to work with, that it goes a long ways as well.
Okay, so let's keep rolling. How do you go from, so you got now the bigger multifamily?
Yeah.
And where to from there? Like, are you selling the 27 unit?
No, and that will probably never sell. That property. You
still have it right now?
It's townhomes, and that was during COVID. Townhomes just blew. The demand for them was crazy, and the values went through the roof. So that property cash flows incredible. And the other thing is they're almost untouched by inflation, because on a apartment building you have all these common areas. So it's like when expenses go up, the landlord feels it. On a townhome, they pay their own utilities, they pay their own garbage and everything. Right. So the fluctuation on expenses, besides doing the renovation and upkeep, isn't near as much. And the demand for them, people didn't like the common area idea when COVID hit. So there was a huge demand. Right. So that's just an unreal property. we are selling the 2 8-unit properties. Those were never part of this company. Those were on the side, so they're both under contract right now. But essentially, after we bought those two, started the limited partnership, that's when we brought in some investors and bought our third property, which was a 96 unit. And that's when basically for the first time, me and Kelsa could step a little bit outside of the day-to-day and start working on the business instead of in the business. And that's kind of when we could start putting in the systems.
And once you did that, once you were able to kind of like get away from doing like actually painting the walls in these units, do you think that set you on like a steeper trajectory to getting more buildings, acquiring more assets?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it had to be. You can't be I couldn't be, like, we were there 12 hours a day doing it. You can't also network and meet people and do all these things. So, no, that helped a lot. And that's, on the management side of it, I'm not in the day-to-day anymore. They come to me and ask the high-level stuff, but we leave that to them. And not being in it every day, you can and dealing with the day-to-day, you can also have a lot of like cool ideas and stuff that, if you're thinking about ordering the flooring or something, you're probably, it's harder to do. So it freed up a lot of time. And yeah, that's when we also, because we planned to scale up pretty quickly, we wanted to make sure that on the management side we could keep up. So we didn't want to have, you can raise money and buy a property, but then you have to manage it and make sure it runs smoothly. So that's where we spent kind of the next years just putting in a lot of systems and making sure we were at a place where we could scale that up as quick as we could.
And so now what year are we in? It's like mid-2020, 2021?
No, yeah, we started our fund, our limited partnership, we started in June of 2021. And then that's when we had already rolled the 2 properties in, bought the third one, and then we kind of spent the next year just really working on the system and stuff, and just networking, getting out, getting to know a lot of people, building out. Like, there's lots of stuff that we had to do on the marketing side and stuff as well. So.
And so now, how many properties do you have right now?
Units, we have 280 units inside of the limited partnership. So just in November 1st, we bought 111 units. So.
And so here we are.
Yeah.
Everything's running smooth.
Yeah, we had a really, really good year, and now we're we're gonna kind of see where the market's at. Stuff is coming up, but it's interest rates are high. I think there's a lot of opportunity coming up in the next 2 years.
How important do you think that is like kind of like paying attention to current events and watching the numbers all the time to be able to go, okay, here's the chance?
Yeah, it's very important, and you have to kind of be willing to adapt. I would have never guessed we'd be at the interest rates we're at today. If you asked me 6 months ago or a year ago, I would have never guessed they'd be where they are today. That also is going to offer a lot of opportunity. And on the rental side, things like that, depending how you're looking at it, but a huge portion of Canadians got priced out of owning a house and are getting pushed into the rental market right now because of that. So things like that make a huge difference, but you couldn't always see them coming either. No one would have seen COVID coming, or no one would have... like I said, I wouldn't have guessed interest rates would be as high as they are today.
So. And you said that everyone kind of in the industry is like, everyone's kind of young.
I don't know if kind of, but as far as brokers, there's a lot of them that are like on the realtor side and stuff that are, they're in and around my age. There's some that are older, but the ones I deal with are, they're 30-ish years, in the 30 to 40.
Just a bunch of young, hungry people out there.
Yeah. And I assume, once they get a little older, maybe they move into a senior role and aren't so much in the day-to-day, but it's great for building relationships, and I like all the brokers. They're great
Would
guys.
you ever expand out of Edmonton, like general Edmonton area? Are you looking to...
Yeah, 100%. So we kind of have a target, end of 2024, we want to be about 100 million under assets under management. That's inside the Edmonton area. And then we want to expand outside. That'll get us in that 600 to 700 unit range. That's where I think, the management company's at scale enough that if we're not here, if we allocate resources somewhere else, it can sustain itself. And that's when I think we want to start scaling. We'll hit a few more markets in Canada.
Stay Canada, you think?
No. The market, it's too small to really grow it, I think. You have a couple, there's not many big cities here. But, we have a tenth the people the States does, so it's pretty appealing to go down there at some point.
Where would you go? What's the dream?
I don't know. And then again, us saying today and trying to act like I know what 10 years looks like, I really don't. You know, you have all the hot markets, Florida, Texas, but to go there new maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. So we would already, dealing with the colder climates, there's probably a lot of markets that you could get into in the States that would make sense.
Wow. So in just like a little bit over a decade or something, you went from shooting beavers on the farm to owning like multi-million-dollar assets.
Yeah.
What's like the, you know, what would you even say is like the through line of that? It's just like buckle down, work hard.
Yeah, I don't know. It's when you're living in it. I mean that kid with the trap line, that seems like 2 or 3 lifetimes ago. Honestly, like, you know, I've had kids and the farming was a phase of my life, and the gym was a phase of my life, and I can hardly remember that, and that was 3 years ago. You know, so it goes. I don't know. I guess
it's like that willingness to like dive in, right? Like you said, burn the ships.
Yeah, and you have to. I guess one thing for me is even now we set the flag, you know, pretty far out there, so it's always something drawing us forward, and I think that keeps us from being stagnant or staying smaller in one place. So
just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Keep scaling.
That's the idea.